Hey guys, what's up? Melry here. I just recorded this entire video with no sound. Yeah, and also wearing a top. Always have to make that disclaimer because I'm obsessed with shoulderless tops or bare shoulder tops, whatever you call them. So today's video is a dupe video. It is all my favorite high-end palettes that are duped for low end, some as much as $4 for a palette of a dupe of my favorite palette ever. So before we get into the video, make sure to give the video the thumbs up because the thumbs help the videos rank and do better and more people see it. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe while you're here. And let me know in the comments an eyeshadow palette that you guys have your eyes on that you want to see duped, like a high-end one that you're looking at Sephora or Nordstrom's and you want to see it duped. Let me know and I will find one. I promise I will find a dupe for it. So let's get into the video. The first palette is an exact dupe, like an exact replica. It is the Naked Heat palette. This is such a gorgeous palette. Of course you can't dupe the packaging because the packaging is just fire. Pun, get it? So this is what the Naked Heat looks like. It is a bunch of mattes, a bunch of shimmers, all beautiful, rich, fiery, warm tones. So pretty. It took the makeup world by storm. Was it last year or the year before? Can't remember. But Rimmel has actually come out with an exact dupe, and it is the Magnifies Spice Edition Eye Contouring Palette. This is what it looks like, and then you open it up, and it's the exact same thing. How is this allowed? Like, how is that okay? I don't know. Apparently it's legal. I don't get it. I have used both these palettes so many times. I don't notice a difference in the application, basically at all. The only difference being the matte shadows, while being very pigmented and soft, they are a little bit harder to blend out and they kind of cling to the patches on your eye, whether it be a dry patch or you have a little bit of excess primer in that area, it will kind of cling and it's a little harder to blend out. But if you're good at blending, it's not much of a difference. It's not much of a difference, you guys. It's not. Now there are two slight differences in this palette. The first being the shade Ounce in the Heat palette, which is a beautiful pearly bone shade. I'm speaking so slow. In the Rimmel palette, it's actually a pearly white shade. It's not a stark white, but it is much more white than in the Naked palette. The other thing being, in the Naked palette, this shade here would actually be a matte similar to this one, which is the shade Sauced right here. So they are slightly different. This, well, not slightly, they're extremely, incredibly two different shadows. So this one here, it's more of a cool toned shimmer shade. That's actually one shade I haven't used in this palette, so I can't speak for how it performs, but they looked for an opportunity to put something a little different in, and that was it, because why have two very similar mattes that don't differ much on the eye when you don't need to? So that is one change in this palette. So I'm not sure about Canadian prices, but in Canada, this Naked Heat palette retails for $66. So pretty hefty, while the Spice palette retails for $14.99. So you can't really go wrong. I am partial to my Urban Decay eyeshadows. So I was actually sent both palettes. If I had to choose, I would choose the Rimmel one because they're pretty much identical. And if I'm spending the money, I really want to feel like I'm getting that extra $45 worth or whatever it is in the Naked Heat. And I don't feel like it's a full other palette's worth of money. So the winner is the Rimmel Spice Edition. Although they kind of ripped off the Naked Heat, so I don't know if I want to support that, but Next, we have my very favorite eyeshadow palette of all time. It is the Modern Renaissance by Anastasia Beverly Hills. This is probably everyone's favorite eyeshadow palette of all time. It's so gorgeous. If you haven't tried it yet, don't worry, you don't need to spend the $55 Canadian that it costs because they have a $7 palette. I think it's $4.99 in the US and $7.99 in Canada. Wet n Wild came out with their dupe for it. The only difference, this one is 10 shadows while the Modern Renaissance is 14 shadows. So there are some shadows missing. but every shadow that you find in the Wet n Wild, you'll find in here. So the shadows that are missing are Golden Ochre, which, as you can see, because I've hit pan, is my favorite transition color of all time. So I'm very sad it's not included in the Wet n Wild. And Vermeer, which is, I use it in every look when I use this palette pretty much. It is so gorgeous. It is a nice pink undertone champagne shade. It is not in the Wet n Wild palette. Venetian Red, I have no problem with that not being in the palette. It's very similar to Love Letter, except there is a small, slight blue shift to the shade. And then Burnt Orange is not included in the Wet n Wild palette. One shade that I'm surprised is included and I wish wasn't, so that they could have Vermeer in there, is Antique Bronze. I never use this shade, ever. Do you? If you've tried this palette or if you have this palette, I'm shocked that was included. I never would have done that if I worked at Wet n Wild. I would have had Vermeer in for sure, because the only shade you have to do like a pop on the lid that's shimmery is the gold shade here, which in the Anastasia palette is Primavera. So I'm actually wearing Wet n Wild on the, Anastasia on this eye today, and I'm wearing the Wet n Wild palette on this eye, and they apply basically the same. I actually prefer the Love Letter shade, the bright fuchsia in the Wet n Wild palette. It's a little brighter and a little crisper, but then I prefer the Primavera shade, which is the gold lid shade in the Modern Renaissance palette. I find the one in the Wet n Wild, ow, I just dug into it. The one in the Wet n Wild palette just falls flat. It's not that shimmery. It's not that intense. It's not that pretty. Where the Anastasia one is just like in your face, gorgeous, reflective, just brings such a pop to your eye, and it just can't be beat. But if you're looking for just the matte shadows, then this is such a good deal. Even though I have the Anastasia one, I'm glad I still bought this for $7. It's amazing. I personally would still buy the Modern Renaissance if you guys are debating, because I love the Vermeer shade. It's so gorgeous. I also love having the Burnt Orange and Raw Sienna both in here, and the Golden Ochre I use with every look. Also the Tempera shade, which is the Ultra Matte. It has a slight shimmer in it that you might not even notice in the Anastasia one, where in the Wet n Wild one, it is just your typical matte bone shade. So while this one is more money, I prefer it. But if you just want the mattes, then definitely just get the Wet n Wild one. I mean, it's a $40, $50 difference. So next, this isn't an exact dupe, but it's a really good substitution if you don't want to spend the money. So we have, where did I put it? We have the Urban Decay Naked Ultimate Basics palette. This is so beautiful. I love matte eyeshadows, and if you do too, I sound like I'm gonna be on the Home Shopping Network, then e.l.f. has a really good slight dupe palette for it. This is the Mad for Matte palette. This is a few years old, but it's so good. So as you can see, they're not identical, but they basically have the same shades. So these three shades here aren't much different from each other. So I don't have a ton to say about these, as they are a little bit different from each other. But if you're looking for a matte neutral palette, then the Mad for Matte is really, really good. I mean, this is so pigmented and so buttery, and just a little goes a really long way. And I love having this in my collection, and it is for sale right now on Sephora.com. But if you don't want to make the splurge and you just want some nice neutral mattes to have to accompany other palettes that might be too intense, not enough mattes in it, you need something more neutral to accompany it, then this is a really good purchase. I think this is $10. The shadows aren't as rich as the Naked palette, but they are very good. You just need to build them up a bit more. They blend out so nicely. It's a really good purchase. I would still repurchase this. So last but not least, this is another palette that I always travel with. This is the Too Faced Clover palette. No one talks about this palette, and I don't understand why, because it is so good and it's so cute. I mean, the packaging, hello, gorgeous. Never mind the fact my son dug his nails into every shadow, but this is like the ultimate everything palette. It has your neutral mattes, your transition shades, your black, your deep chocolate brown, your gorgeous shimmer shades, your highlight shades. It's got your pinks, your purple, your green, your blue, your yellow. It's got everything you could possibly need to create a look, and no one talks about it. I don't understand. I love this palette so much, and I found a really good dupe for it at the drugstore. This palette never gets talked about either. I don't know who Soph X is, who collaborated on it, but this palette is so good. It is the Makeup Revolution Soph X Ultra eyeshadows. It's gorgeous. So it's not an exact dupe because it has more colors. So this palette actually has 24 colors, while the Too Faced one only has 18. And you will find all the same shadows in here besides the yellow, but it has everything else and it's so gorgeous. This was only $9.99, €9. I got it in Germany, so I don't know what the price would be here, probably like $15. It is stunning. It has so many mattes. You can create so many neutral looks. It's got your black, your browns, your taupes, your burnt oranges, some maroon, your pinks, your purples, literally everything you could possibly need. And it performs so stinking well. I do have a video up on my Instagram of me using it. I cannot say enough about this palette, and I can't say enough about the Clover palette. Someone please talk about this more or use it. It's so good. And this is coming from someone who's actually recently removed from the Too Faced PR list. I don't know why they removed me, but I am still obsessed with this palette. So that is it for today, guys. Just a quick video. Again, let me know in the comments what palette you want to see duped, and I will do my best to find that for you. And make sure to check me out on Instagram at @MelRaySiegel, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.